right, welcome to Reptile Fight Club. I am Justin Buhlander, and with me as always, Mr. Rob Stone. How you doing?
Wave to the people.
Blow them kisses.
Blow them kisses. Yeah, all good.
Nice. You enjoying Snake Week?
I've seen that some of that stuff's going and it looks pretty good. I know what Pingle just had. I kind of became aware of it because the Pingle Pod, there was a show titled Snake Week talking about some of the various festivities and things. I suppose in the year of the snake, it's all the more compelling, which is good. Glad people are, all the public facing stuff is probably good. I haven't dove in too much. I've been busy researching for our September misadventure. Lots of thoughts and ideas and things. So that was really good. Dustin sent me something that was super interesting.
Oh, yeah. I need to watch that. I've got that on my radar, but yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully in, what would it be? So in 3 months, we'll have people can tune in. More details to come. There's no reason to talk further on it. It's very tough. So we'll see what we.
Yeah, it'll be an adventure regardless of what we find.
Absolutely true. That is absolutely true.
All right. Well, tonight we've got Ryan Dumas back on the show. I'm glad to have you here. Thanks for coming. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to see you guys. It's been a while, but always happy to chat and argue.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Ryan's got some great ideas, so nice of him to suggest a few and come on to discuss one tonight. So glad to have you. I just listened to Rick Shine on the Snake Days or Snake Week or whatever, and he gave a talk on snake conservation in Australia. It was really interesting. Talked about a few projects that they're working on. And I was unaware that sea snakes are declining like at an alarming rate throughout the world, and he kind of alluded to the fact that they're still stable populations in kind of a Goldilocks zone where it's not completely bleached out and destroyed. The coral reefs are still stable, but there also is enough fishing that it's keeping the predatory fish from eating the snakes. I guess that's the big problem with them is these predatory fish just eat them like candy. So they found this out by moving these snake-shaped lures through the water, and the fish just annihilate them every time. It's pretty crazy. So I guess if you're trying to fish some cool stuff out on the coral reef, maybe use a local sea snake patterned snake lure, and you'll catch lots of good fish. So yeah, it was pretty crazy. He showed a few videos of that occurring. And then the other really crazy thing, they genetically modified cane toads to be less toxic and also to be lighter in color or albino. So they showed that they could, change the genes or whatever, showed using the albino deletion, I guess, of that gene. And then so they're releasing all these less toxic cane toads as kind of teacher toads. So the goannas or whatever will taste them and be like, okay, that's bad. I don't want to, that made me sick. I'm not going to eat that again. So they learn, so they have a second chance at life rather than just one bite and you're dead. So kind of cool. But he said, at first the Australians were like, what are you kidding me? You're going to release tens of thousands of toads into the environment. I thought we've been doing all this effort to try to remove them, not to add more. And he's like, well, here's what we're trying to do, and showed all this data about how it works and how the Aboriginal communities are buying into it and stuff. So cool stuff. Really great talks. Yeah, I think they're going to put them on YouTube, so check them out. I think Emily Taylor is one of the organizers of the event. So yeah, good stuff. But I don't know. Got my last clutch out of the incubator. I had some more baby or pygmy pythons hatch out. So happy to have some more of those to pull my hair out for, and pretty soon I'll be very bald. But yeah, they can be frustrating.
I had them. I bred them one breeding season for them was enough for me.
Yeah.
That was a lot more work than I had thought. And I've got big, not very dexterous, not a finesse guy, and I think you need to be a finesse guy for those guys.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you just have to stay on top of them. Now that's been my problem in the past is I like to go herp and, right during hatchling season. And so I'll feed them, start assist feeding them, get their metabolism ramped up, and then I'll leave on a trip, and then I'll come home and they'll be like, uh-oh, that's not good. So just need to herp less, but that's not great either. So, or train somebody.
That didn't sound right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I made a snake day post today with snakes. I was trying to do like a little grid, picture, and had to make 4 of them from all the cool species I've seen within the last year. It's been a good couple of years of herping for sure. So, yep. Well, I don't know what else. I had a little water polo tournament this last weekend, so that was pretty fun, and played some water polo out in a lake, which was a little different than I'm used to, but it was a good time, and got some nice sunburns and all that good stuff. But yeah, good times. All right. Well, what's going on in your worlds? Anything exciting happening?
I assume you were talking to Rob.
Oh, both of you. Either one.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, nothing really, other than the or the research angle. That's very much where my head's at right now.
Yeah. Well, didn't you redo a bunch of your Barons?
Oh,
or not Barons?
Yeah.
Not Barons.
Easy, buddy.
I realized my mistake very quickly.
Yeah, no, I had redone the leaf litter on the setups that I had done for pairs of rhinos. And yeah, just couldn't be happier with them. I put the universal rock background in there. Probably I set those up maybe 15, 16 months ago, put in a drainage layer and soil and things, have a hidden level of cork bark, have some bamboo poles to give them some verticality, fill that space, have the luminized bulbs on there, which are cool. And, nice. Yeah, I mean, they make use of essentially the whole thing. With the kind of the structure of the cage, they can hang just off underneath the screen tops, or they can be hanging off the universal rock onto the bamboo, so that effectively, right? I mean, either it was when we were talking on the podcast last week, or a podcast that I've listened to, right? A big part of the discussion is always sort of the utility of space in cages, and whether we're actually, we have this construction in our mind that often then is sort of, we're only utilizing a third of the cage, something like that, and there's this giant empty space that maybe helps with the visualization. I don't know, maybe it doesn't, but that's sort of a classic cage design or cage utility problem. So it's nice to have something where they're not the largest cages, they're the largest cages that would fit relative to the task that I had at hand. But the fact that they have utility out of essentially all of it, I think really has proven they worked really well in terms of having together, feed them together without issue. So
nice. Do you have any issues retrieving eggs or anything like that? Are they burying them deep, or is it pretty easy?
Yeah, and so I had last season, and then this, the eggs from this season as well. And in all the instances, they've either laid them, basically they always lay them underneath that slab of cork bark that's, semi-submerged into the soil. It's so dry here that it's difficult to have, that even with the drainage layer, to have sort of the right perfect balance of moisture in the soil. And in the same way that you described, right? I think this year, 4 out of the 6 clutches that I had gotten, I was gone. On one of them, Brendan was here to take them out, but I don't know if they'd already been there a day or 2 or whatever. So I still need to work on my moisture ratio when I'm anticipating those, make sure that's a priority thing. But yeah, no, that hasn't been a problem at all. It doesn't seem like they're super eager to dig. They'll utilize access to those, underground features and things. And it has been super fascinating shifting from a rack to see, there's definitely one that just loves to sit on that bamboo elevated all the time. That's its preference. There are others that essentially never do it. But for the most part, I see a seasonal shift, either both within a day and across the year, where, they typically in the winter, they're going to be, for the most part, underground, and then they'll come out and bask in the middle part of the day. Whereas in the summer, it's the inversion, right? So that they're typically hidden away during the day, and then at night they're out cruising around and all posted up and things. And it is super interesting relative to the idea of at some point here, I'm going to make it work to go either to Tamdao or Kappa to try and go see him. And it's I now have many more. Despite keeping them now for going on 24 years, just the last 18 months, 16 months, whatever it's been in these cages has taught me a lot more about what I could use in the field in terms of anticipation relative to temperatures and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, yeah, that sounds like a fun project, but a little bit of headache. I always dread kind of redoing enclosures or, cleaning
this
out
was
when
pretty
they're
easy.
that.
This was mostly, and I would say that it's been, that's part of the joy of this, right? Other than sort of, what's the phrase for just sort of localized picking up the poop? That sort of a deal.
Spot
other than
cleaning.
that, spot cleaning, exactly. Other than that, this was the first time I was really kind of getting into remixing the soil and that sort of stuff. I do have 5 more cages to set up that'll be more in the vein that you're talking about of sort of the process-based thing. That'll be some work for sure.
Yeah. Cool. How about you, Ryan? How's your season going? You got some fun projects going?
I've always got something going on.
Yeah.
I think I really have kind of slowed down on my python reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
I still have Rockhampton coastals and some rough scales, and I did not prep them at all for breeding last year or the previous year as I was going through my new job and stuff. I just didn't want to allocate time. So this is the first year I've really gotten back with snakes, and I have a couple clutches of my favorite snakes possibly is the Okatee Hunt Club locality corn snakes. Mm-hmm. So I've got a couple. They could hatch any day now, actually, and so we'll see. That I just maybe the most beautiful American snake, just gorgeous. Yeah. But I've always got turtle stuff going on. I just picked up 3 new eggs today. I happened to go outside and see her digging, trying to cover it up real nonchalantly, and you can't stare at them or else. Oh, sorry, this is a Florida box turtle.
Okay. Cool.
No, you don't want to stare at them because you don't want to spook them. So you just side eye them while you're walking by. And then I feel bad because she spent so much time covering up and patting them down just right. And I lured her away with a pink mouse and then just stole all her babies. Yeah.
Right.
But it's nuts. Box turtles are crazy. You can incubate for females and they can hatch. And I hatched them in 42 days.
What? Wow.
Yeah. And Jordan Danini, who does a lot of stuff with them in the wild down in Southwest Florida. Mm-hmm. He's had them hatch in 30 something days in situ. It's wild, but
that's crazy.
Now I'm in the long haul for males. So I stuck them up on top of a cage, and it's going to be room temperature. We'll see how long it takes. Cause hatching them fast is always that urge is right there. So it's always better to have a few more females. But yeah, I've got those. Got a few Holmes Hinchback tortoise eggs cooking.
Oh, cool.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see more eggs from them soon.
Nice.
I'm waiting for pancake tortoises to lay eggs. I had one drop 3 eggs, which is ridiculous for a pan. They're like 1 egg at a time, maybe 2. She must have held one in for a while, so it had to feel good to get those out. But none of them were fertile, unfortunately. But she's her weight is up. She should be hammering eggs, but
nice.
For the most part, and I have a trio of crested geckos that are, I loved them when I was an intern at the Cincinnati Zoo. This is back in 2001. It was before crested geckos got as popular as they are now.
Right.
And they just had regular, tannish, beigeish crested geckos. And I love those things. So I had an opportunity to get some 4 years ago. And I got a trio, and they're just constantly spitting out babies. I just keep them together. I don't pull eggs.
Right.
Just occasionally some random ones show up. So I've always got some of those.
Yeah.
I try to give them away because I only have 1 or 2 at a time. But so I'm still in the game.
All right.
I'm just a lot quieter about it. I can't see myself ever not having reptiles in the garage.
I know. I'm the same way. I probably should slim down my collection a lot more, but it's always something, I guess. I don't know.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough. I slimmed down a lot, and they were not fun decisions, but
right.
Man. Yeah. It's
questions for you then on the box turtle incubation. I had no idea the sort of short end on that, at least at the female temperatures. So in the context of leopard geckos, right, there was so many offspring and so much time put into figuring it out. Have they figured out in incubation what date the sex is established or determined or overwritten? Just so I bring it up, right? And so in the leopard gecko context, I think it was set at 18 or 19 days after they're laid. And so what they started doing, because they were noticing that because there are so many color and pattern meats, all these sort of add-on factors, was both a timeliness thing and because they tend offspring that were incubated at warmer temperatures tended to be brighter and more colorful and have cleaner patterns, that essentially they would leave them at the desired temperature for the window of time to establish the gender, and then they would incubate them warmer so they would look as good as they possibly could. And it raises a question like whether do they come out more vigorous, less vigorous the longer that they incubate? Is there like knock-on advantages in terms of that, or in the context of box turtles? Because that's, obviously other factors beyond just are they more or less colorful, all these different things. But I'm curious.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I've heard of that before, and I think it's both cool and crazy. Like, yeah, we need to hatch this stuff out quick. I don't care. Like, I don't know if that's been studied in Florida box turtles. I think that it would be studied a lot more often in something that is as marketable as leopard geckos. I'm sure that crested geckos, if they are TSD, have probably had it figured out and things like that, because there's
right. I think is the.
I don't think they are, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. I just assume geckos. I know like lychees are. I thought.
Yeah.
But I guess they're different now, right? They're not the same genus anymore. So I haven't kept up with my Rhacodactylus.
Right.
Yeah, but it's wild. I don't know. I think that would be worth. I think it's probably similar for most turtles if you find out. But yeah, I would be interested to find out. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would hatch some males a little faster. I don't know.
Right. I don't know. If you knew you'd set them, and then you could, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. That's crazy. It's really cool.
But there's also something about having like a long-term incubation, because you always have I feel the most empty in my reptile collection when there are no eggs. Like when there's nothing to look forward to except for just like feeding and cleaning.
Yeah.
The turtles give you a little more, I think, than a lot of snakes. There's a lot of sass and personality with a lot of them, but knowing I've got like 40 days for some female box turtles to hatch out, and knowing that I have I don't even know how long it takes for males, because I rarely find turtle eggs on the day they're laid. It's just like, something looks disturbed in here. I need to dig through this stuff. And then I have to take them out, and it's a hassle, but it's fine. But this particular clutch, I mean, I should find out roughly how long males take. And I'm sure we know somewhere, but.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that'll be super interesting. Do you so just no idea, or you think it's doubled up, or more than that?
I really don't know. I've incubated my Florida box turtles usually at like 84, but that's before I knew anything. And I guess you can get a little bit of both sexes, but most likely males. But I had one, and then I talked to Jordan, and he was like, females hatch out sometimes as fast as 30 something days. And I was like, get out of town. I'm going to incubate my box turtles in my python temperatures.
Right.
And I'll be damned. 42 days later, they popped out. I mean, they pipped at 41, but they came out at 42 days. And then last year I had put my box turtles outside. It's like Mother's Day. I put the box turtles outside. And I think in like the first week of July, I found a baby box turtle in their indoor setup, because I didn't go through their soil because they weren't in there. I mean, I didn't mist it. I didn't do anything.
Wow.
And still I saw a little turtle walking around. I was like, holy crap, you gotta be kidding
incredible.
me.
Yeah. Tough.
So I know that one was a male, because it had been a long time. But
right. Do you know, like when they're laid, are they kind of advanced through their progression to some extent already, or do you know what like stage they're laid at? Or I know pythons, are already, some of the way through development. So, keeping the female at the higher temperatures or reasonable temperatures for whatever species is very important, and because they're already like stage 40 or something. I forget the specifics there, but fairly. I mean, if you open an egg, you're going to see like a little worm thing. It's not like some huge snake, but
right.
like they're not a one cell or two cell,
or whatever.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised. I've never thought of that, but that's a great question, and it reminds me. I don't know if you've ever read about the bowsprit tortoises in South Africa. they have facultative ovoviviparity,
No,
where they'll
wow.
just, at certain environmental conditions, they will just withhold their eggs and incubate them inside and lay them, and they'll hatch a few days later.
Wow, that's so
Unreal.
cool.
Absolutely
Yeah,
unreal.
yeah.
Like a response to climate change, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know. But so because I know that is
thing.
been kind of like shown, that I wouldn't doubt it. Maybe that is a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a great
Just
question.
depending on where they live or whatever. I wish we could figure out what's going on. I mean, it seems like the bowsprit tortoises are fairly common in some of their areas where they're found in the wild, but it just seems like they're not very well produced in captivity. Am I wrong? I don't keep up with the tortoise turtle
As
area.
far as I know, I've really, since I've gotten my new job, I'm really hyper focused on the ones that I keep. But I know the South African tortoises don't get exported much, if at all. So there could be a bottleneck there, genetic bottleneck on that side. But yeah, I don't think they're produced that often. They are pretty little tortoises.
They're beautiful.
I see some of those parrot-beaked tortoises, and I'm like, well, I'm fine with it as long. I mean, there seems to be plenty of them in situ, so that makes me feel good. So I don't get there, but yeah, some of them are really crazy looking, and
that's a
tortoise
bucket list to go herp there. That'd be cool. Just for the tortoise diversity, South Africa would be incredible.
Do you follow what's the guy's name? Tyrone
Ping. Yeah.
Golly, he posts some great
cool stuff.
He finds everything. I love all the Ouroboros and like the like the girdle lizards and stuff that he posts. Good Lord.
Those weird sand lizards, what are they? They look like three lizards smushed into one. Like they have like stripes, and then they're unbanded, and then they have like a bright red tail or something. I can't remember the species name on them. Really cool looking. Yeah.
Yeah, he makes me want to go to South Africa.
Yeah, exactly. If I could go herp with that guy, that'd be really cool too.
No doubt. They have some of those videos where it's like, this is a neighborhood, and he's like, he turns to the right, and there's this tiny little like 500 square foot plot of like greenery, and he's like, this is where we're going. And it's like chameleon, and it's like, golly, that must be. We're used to some things here, but it's got to be insane to just turn off a street and be like, all right, we're going to look here for some chameleons, and then just snag them.
I think you can do that in Florida.
You're probably right. Yeah.
As long as you don't go to the wrong place, because I hear you get shot in some of those areas too. You gotta
in
be
Florida,
careful.
probably.
Be careful in Florida.
Florida, man.
Yep. It's I don't know. There's a lot of cool places out there. I think I'd like to herp, and hopefully I'll live long enough to do all check off all the places on my bucket list. But yeah,
it's good to have goals.
It sure is. And it's unfortunate that Australia is so cool and has so many cool things that I just keep going back there. But one of these days I'll branch out a little.
You like what you like, man.
Yeah, it's true. And I still have quite a few things I need to find there too that are high up on my list that just seem to evade me. It's the way it goes. But all right. Well, today we're going to fight about a topic in regards to reptile keeping and whether or not it's a right or a privilege. So, yeah, let's dive in here. We'll get a couple coin tosses going. Rob, you want to call the first one there?
Heads.
Heads. It is tails. Let's see. I'll go ahead if that's all right.
All good. Happy to moderate.
Ryan. All right, sounds good. And go ahead with the second one there, Ryan.
Oh, me. Let's go heads.
Heads. Tails again, man. I'm a double winner.
Nice We're just taking your word for it.
Yeah. Well, I try to be honest. I do my best. Let's go with it's my right to keep reptiles. I'm going to take that side. I'm a proud American. I can do whatever I want.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Well,
maybe as a moderation before we even get into this, right? We can talk about sort of from the legal perspective, what's a right versus a privilege. So in terms of rights, generally speaking, right, we're talking about legal or moral entitlements that people, have by right of being humans. And that's basically kind of the space we're in. were I talking about it. So maybe throw out an idea for you, Justin. I think historically, people have been too willing to concede things that are higher level Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of, as we walk through that, they're probably a little bit too willing to cede those as privileges. So privileges, contrarily, right, are benefits or advantages that are afforded based on social class status, sort of position within society, things of that nature. And those then are more reflective of sort of grants from people in power or authority. So just as a general construction from a legal perspective.
Okay.
Kind of there to give us that moderated content.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Although you maybe have lost me at Laszlo. What was his name?
Maslow's hierarchy.
I don't know if I'm familiar with that.
So it's like a 5-step that walks through basically going from your physiological requirements up to self-actualization. So and kind of there's a progressive step through there, and the sort of social view historically has concentrated on sort of the physiological restraints and security that are the bases of the pyramid of needs. Whereas, as I say, so it escalates to, love and belonging, esteem, and then self-actualization. So I would say, certainly you could be in a space where, someone is a little bit more, as you say, this is my right, then you should be fully on board with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and say that my right to self-actualization should define my position here. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can necessarily help that we're born just to love these things. You know what I mean? Like we're just drawn to them, and if we don't fill that need, we'll just be an empty, hollow shell of a human. So I think Maslow's on my side here. I think he wants us to have those reptiles.
Yeah, I think he's dead, right? So
if he's so smart, how come
right? Figure that one out, Maslow.
It didn't save you from dying, did it, buddy?
That was his right to die. Okay,
right.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would also say, if we're so hell bent on the right to bear arms and keep guns, I think snakes are a small concession in that regard, or any reptile for that matter. But I don't know. Maybe that's the way I'm starting this out. Just give me reptiles or give me death.
Wow, you do love these gigs, yeah. It's a tough one. Yeah. I mean, there's legitimate and understandable arguments on either side of what you're doing. But I mean, it's a lot of the things are different for animals. I guess I would ask if it's a right. Like I think owning a dog is a right. Dogs are, they are beholden to welfare laws and humane ethical laws.
Sure.
If it's your right to keep reptiles, is that something that you think reptiles should have as well? Should keeping reptiles, should that animal cruelty adhere and welfare standards adhere to that?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yes, I would say that's very important, but also I think too, I mean, you have a chance to have that right taken away if your behavior or your the way you're doing it is not in line with, say, ethics or animal welfare or things like that. If you're just out there keeping, just churning them out to as a puppy mill, for lack of a better way to say that, and you're just dumping them, throwing them in the freezer if you can't sell them or something, you're not doing it right. And so I think you lose that right to keep once you cross that line. Does that make sense?
I think you should lose that right if that's the kind of ethics that you be following. But I don't think there's any laws against that in most states, at least.
Yeah.
Now I'm making some claims because I'm not looking up the legal foundations of animal welfare for all these things. But
I know I think Rob got an animal welfare call on him once for making a statement on a podcast once, and then
Oh wow.
Somebody sent the authorities over to check and
Well, I
make
think they were
sure.
considering it, and that was based on someone else's description of something that happened in Australia. So, yeah, I mean, it's totally wild. The thing that jumps to my mind when we have that conversation is it's only relatively recently that some laws have explicitly included herps as animals within their meaning, right? So the sort of pet welfare act in Colorado, until I don't know, the last 10 or 12 years, within the meaning of animal, reptiles weren't within the meaning of animal within the language of the legislation.
Yeah. So, I guess that might not necessarily end your right legally, but I think if we're in a and sometimes that's a hard call to make, right? What crosses the line and what doesn't. I think there's plenty of dirt bags that persist in our hobby that are not keeping ethically or at high standard that the animals deserve. And I think everybody may fall into that at some point too, because you have a bad week, or you're out herping and you're neglecting your reptiles. Does that mean you should lose them all, or are you just trying to increase your knowledge of reptiles to keep them better? So it is a fine line, and one person's interpretation, I guess that's the idea of bringing that example up, is one person's interpretation or idea of animal welfare and broad applications of that may not match another person's, and so that can be shaky ground, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head there. It's all in how you interpret it. Are you talking about specifically exotic wildlife versus native wildlife? Native wildlife belongs to the states, or at least in Ohio. All the wildlife in Ohio belongs to the state of Ohio. Therefore, is it really your right to own that animal? Is it? I mean, we allow it to a certain extent, but I think more along, if you read through it, it's more of a like a special privilege. And it is, I think, and I think it's a privilege a lot of times to keep reptiles. It's like a special honor. I don't think we're owed the right to keep reptiles, to keep any animals, really. I don't think we're owed that right. Again, I'm arguing my side.
Sure.
I don't. You're not necessarily owed that right. I think it's something that you can do. There should be. I think you have a right to pursue it, but I think that the right to just keep whatever you want, however you want. I just don't think morally and ethically that is the right way to approach keeping animals. I think that there's a better way to do so, and just like I think it's a right to pursue getting a driver's license.
Sure.
But it's a privilege to drive.
Okay.
You have to. There are safety standards. There are ethical standards. There are
laws of the road, and you have to follow all those things.
You've done some studying. You've taken some tests. You've demonstrated that you are minimally competent. And
right.
I grew up in Kentucky, so you definitely are minimally competent to drive a vehicle, a several ton vehicle with people around and children in neighborhoods. So I don't think that's a very high threshold, but driving is not a right. And I think that same type of messaging applies towards keeping reptiles. And I would like to see more states actually apply reptiles as animals. That doesn't mean I want to see what happened with birds necessarily with the Welfare Act that was proposed from the congressperson a year or two ago in Minnesota. But I'm not opposed to the idea. I'm opposed to copying and pasting without without scientific or without expertise to guide that path.
Yeah. I think it can be very problematic too, when you have people defining, who can do this and who can't do this, or what can be done. I guess I'll use a Utah example, right? The Gila monster. Okay, so they just their northern extent of their range just dips into the southwest portion of Utah. And since they're native, we're not allowed to keep them. But you go over to Colorado and Rob State, and they can keep them all day long. So, and they have Utah Gila monsters that are captive bred and born and produced and sold in captivity. So, I would love to keep a Gila monster, but because I live in Utah, it is not my right to do so. But at the same time, they'll go down there and pave over Gila monster habitat all day long, displacing or killing, Gila monsters in the act. And so, where does their right to live and my right to keep them, in the case of, say, building a Walmart or something over their habitat, why is it not my right to go in there and kind of save them from that destruction, give them a nice home in my living room, or whatever, and keep them. I think they have done a little bit of that with the desert tortoises. Same situation, right? They just kind of pop up into Utah just a little bit, and there have been some, where they're placing disturbed or displaced tortoises with people who can properly house them. You have to meet certain qualifications and minimal standards to keep them. But, there is that opportunity. There is that right to keep them if you can meet those standards. So and again, it is kind of I guess there is a fine line between right and privilege there, because, if you're following rules, I still think it could fall in within the right side of the argument, because, if you give up those rights, then you don't have them anymore, then you're unprivileged to keep them or disprivileged or whatever the word is. So, but I think there should be, that right should be there regardless of the hoops you have to jump through to have that right. Does that make sense? I don't think anything should be forbidden, I guess, is my point. If you want to keep a saltwater crocodile, I think you should have the right, but I also think you should have a lot of barriers in place, so it's not just a willy-nilly decision. Oh, I saw this on, the Croc Hunter, I'm going to go get a saltwater crocodile and keep it in my, bathtub until it gets too big, and then I'll worry about it from there. Like those kind of things.
I'll call the zoo.
Yeah, I'll just dump it at the zoo, and they'll be fine with that. Or I'll just release it in my neighborhood pond, and that'll be fine. What could go wrong? So, I think there should be an avenue to do just about anything you want. Maybe that's like a libertarian view, but I think
I think you're right on.
You can meet the minimum standards, you should be able to have that right to do so.
I think having the right to a pathway to do something is important. And I think there's two definitions of like really a right as well. There's like, it's my right as a cold-blooded American, or I say cold-blooded because, context.
We're reptile keepers. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's rights that are enforceable by law. And that's one of the things that I do like that US ARC does is, they fight for these enforceable laws that are written and documented into code. And that's what they focus on. And that's good. It's not like it's my right to do whatever the hell I want. I want to touch back on the Gila monster thing for a second, because based on the information I have, your state is failing you. To that animal should probably be listed as a state endangered species at a minimum, and there should be a lot more work to go through in order to develop on those lands. At least have some sort of remediation. Not that always works, but some sort of remediation to compensate for any losses to habitat. That's usually pretty common in a lot of places, that if that's not happening, that blows.
To be fair, like they have set aside a great plot of land and very nice habitat that Rob and I have both herped extensively and with great success, finding a couple Gila monsters and several desert tortoises and all sorts of other cool wildlife. So, they did set aside a lot of land. But, sometimes you run into those like things like that happens in Florida with the gopher tortoises, where
Yeah.
the fine is easily coverable and it's not worth the headache of stopping construction. Just pave over it or fill it with cement and move on and pay the fine, if you get caught.
Florida's a train wreck.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
That
and I
is
think that's where you run into problems with, like, if the punishment doesn't match the crime, which, paving over, just entombing a live gopher tortoise in cement should be punishable by removal of fingernails, or at least,
Right.
Yeah.
What would Nick say?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those are horrible. I hate reading that. And I hate the like, oh, well, there's that company that was out a while ago. I can't remember the name of them, but they were a development company, but they set aside like 1,000 acres, so they could put all of their tortoises. Geez, gopher tortoise? Oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be a turtle guy. But I put all their gopher tortoises in this one spot, but the density of tortoises was immense, and it was really just a ploy to help them get some more development done. And there's a lot of that crap out there, and it does provide a lot of gray areas. But yeah, I mean, some of the stuff you touched on makes a lot of sense. I do think that there's a pathway, but and I think a pathway to reach some of your goals it should always be open for debate or discussion. But where I feel the worst is you go to a reptile show and you just go ahead and buy that saltwater crocodile,
right?
Or you go buy that black mamba. And when it's really bad is when those species have, some very specific needs, and those specific needs are shit ton of space, and requirements, and they also pose an immediate danger to the general public.
Right.
I feel like that's a animal that it should be more of a privilege than a right to own that animal. I think if you have a pathway to prove your competency at a minimal level. I'm not saying that people need to register their animals and pass a 100 question exam and cite their sources. That's ludicrous. But there has to be, if there's going to be a pathway, it has to be accessible, achievable by a competent person. But we just can't keep selling these things to folks.
Yeah. And I think, this
that is not a right. Because if you're infringing on other people's rights when you do that.
Exactly. And I think that kind of goes along with, enforceability. Like, if they make all these laws that allow people a pathway to keep a tiger or a saltwater crocodile or something, then they also have to enforce that. And there may not be the resources to do so. So it's much easier just to prohibit,
Frequently that happens.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Most states probably prohibit a lot of these things, or cities or counties, or, depending on where you live. I know Utah, we can't keep any venomous, no crocodilians, even though some crocodilians might not fall under that, dangerously large and needing,
but they don't want to go through it.
No,
if you got baby crocodilians, they don't need someone saying that's a Cuvier's door or a Nile. They're just gonna yeah. And I mean, that's what happened fairly recently, like 2 or 3 years ago, in for the federal listing of the megacephalic graptemes, like the big map turtles.
Yeah,
where you have the Pearl River map turtle, that's an endangered species. The Pascagoula was petitioned to be listed, and then they just threw all the big-headed graptemes on there for similarity of appearance. So they're all the species are protected, as well as I don't know if all the species habitat is protected. The Pearl River is protected because there's a number of species, at least for now.
Right.
We'll see if that changes, but and that is something that makes it makes sense on one side, but it doesn't on the other. You know what I mean? But as a casual observer, you're like, come on, I can tell the difference between a Barber's map turtle and this Pascagoula map turtle. But when you have a wildlife law enforcement officer in the field and they see you with a bushel of turtles, and you've got 2 Barber's map turtles and a bunch of the endangered ones, is it really fair to train everybody to be able to identify
Yeah.
when they're also trying to identify between butterflies and grasshoppers and birds and fish and all the other wildlife that is
Yeah,
out there. So they have a tough task, and there's that side of it that slows things down.
for sure. Yeah, I think if places can make common sense laws, like that's the best case scenario. And I think Utah has progressed a bit. They used to have a lot of things that were on the no go zone, and one example of that is the California king snake, similar to the desert tortoise and the Gila monsters. Cal kings make a brief entry into Utah down in the southwest corner, and well, I guess they range over into the east as well, bottom portion of Utah, but very south part of Utah, and they're very hard to find in the eastern part of their range as well.
5 to 10% of the state, right?
Yeah,
Total.
yeah, exactly. And so they're in every pet shop, but they were prohibited to keep California king snakes. But you could go to your local pet shop and buy one. It's like no big deal. So having them be prohibited was kind of ridiculous because what are you going to make all these criminals of people going into PetSmart and buying a cow king? So other ways they finally kind of relented and said, okay, that's right, we don't want to make criminals of children, and they also changed it so you could get a permit to collect cow kings in southwestern part of the state where they're reasonably stable populations and easy to find. And so that's been introduced into the regulations in the state, and now you can keep a cow king and not get arrested.
Well,
that's
right.
excellent and surprising.
Yeah. Part of that was taking advantage of citizen science, though, right? In the sense that you have to, for it to be legal, to get that protection, you have to, within a day or two, you have to submit the record of where you got it, what you took, all those different. So there are different. Actually, it's more like a managed game system. It's non-game animals, but sort of a managed game application in Utah. And yeah, I totally agree. Right. So much progress from, what was that, 2019, 2020, something like that?
Yeah. And again, like in regards to that, it kind of introduces a conundrum, because people from outside the state can come in Utah and there's no enforcement for them. Like you don't know how many they have at home because you can't go check out their collection or something, because they're in another state. And so enforcing those things, you can only enforce it with folks that live in your state. And so,
where you have the capacity to do so, right?
Exactly.
And Colorado, that's been a huge issue with people. There's a particularly well-known hognose spot that the leucistics are from. And, it's everybody's common holiday to go out to this spot and, grab it. They're still out there. Only when I was going back through my pictures did I look and see, like, oh yeah, that was a heterozygous one, because they're like a fire type leucistic. Yeah. So I was looking at, there's no black on this thing. Oh, there you go. So they're still around and about, but yeah, few and far between. But people are coming, and as you say, Justin, they're not, in Nebraska or Kansas or whatever. They don't have that same prohibition, let alone being citizens of those states, to come in. Or Texas or wherever, literally anywhere that isn't here, sort of the law doesn't apply as long as they're not caught in hand in the field,
Right. And yeah, I guess the fact that there are Utah Gila monsters for sale in the hobby, just not in Utah, is kind of ironic, I guess. If they're protected in Utah, and I don't recall a time when they weren't protected or prohibited from keeping in Utah. How are there Utah Gila monsters in the hobby? I guess.
Well, I think some of that, right? It depends, because it's sort of an Australia question, right? So as much as they've had some level of protection, was there ever an arrangement by which a licensed facility was given, either given some, or they had received a confiscation or whatever, but still had that sort of lineage associated with them.
Right.
Osborne is the name, and the first name that springs to mind when we're talking about those, because he's 6 or 7 generations deep on Utah Gilas that are out of, I think, probably that context of they definitely originated in a facility that had them. I don't know if it was confiscation or what that had put them there in the first place, but it's even 6 or 7 generations later. Well, here was the paperwork that came with those initial, and I mean, now they're so wild. He selectively bred those things so that the ones that are least expensive are the ones that are the sort that look like what we've seen, whereas these other ones are truly, designer Gila monsters.
Yep. Yeah.
And there's
But
also lots of liars out there. I mean, this person sounds like they're documented. I'm not talking about this person, but it's like if someone hatches a Gila or finds a Gila and it looks like something, like think about Okatee corn snakes. There's an Okatee mutation because it has the appearance of an Okatee. Just call it an Okatee. But it's Okatee, from my experiences, is a locality specific animal from Jasper County, South Carolina. So you see some, you're like, oh, that's a Utah. That's a Utah Gila.
Yeah.
Add $200.
What do they look like just over the border in Nevada or Arizona? Like they're probably going to look very similar. Yeah.
But the location is so small in Utah.
Yeah.
So, that's a rare species.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to want that one. Maybe you already have that same locality on the Nevada side, but you're like, oh, Utah.
Yeah, you got to label it Utah or else nobody will want it. Right?
We're all hoarders to some degree with this stuff, so we got to get that one too.
Yeah. Sorry, Rob. What do you want to say there?
So yeah.
No. And I was just saying, I think part of that too might be, I don't know if there's sort of the legal background to make a gray listed animal from those other places, right? So Utah, there definitely is a historic, in the Australia sense of, well, as much as Australians might like to say, none have come out legally, or they've been protected my whole life, and whatever. I can't imagine, anything violated of that. I don't know that I've ever seen someone marketing like, again, so their range is small, in all those places. Yeah. And I don't know that I've ever notably seen, because the Gila should be, those Utah Gilas should be from the same spot that we saw my first spec, in Nevada, right below, east of Vegas and whatever. Like that should be, I don't think I've ever seen those, at least marked as such, right? So there's not as much benefit, or with the utility of saying Utah, while also being land of dirty sodas and all that, is saying, it ties it into something that's acceptable. Whereas if you were to say, oh, this is my Clark County, Nevada, Gila, that probably raises a bunch of questions of like, oh, well, I'm familiar with Washington County, Utah. That's a thing that ties into stuff that I know I've seen. So maybe that's a gray, in that gray area. If you said Clark County, Nevada, Gila, you're inviting questions.
Right.
The way is the unrelated rough scale pythons. Oh, these are unrelated rough scale pythons. And it's like, well, you're raising a lot of questions. That sort of
unrelated to the 5 that were collected originally? What are you saying
Intriguing.
here?
Tell me more.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a lot of gray areas and things, but
Ryan, what you're saying of just sort of, there is a propensity in people generally, but certainly in herpetoculture, we know plenty of known violators who are an insistence on gilding the lily, right? Where it's like you have something that should be cool enough on its own right. You don't have to make a fiction to try and persuade on that. And that's certainly...
Well, and two, we've also seen unscrupulous individuals like collect study animals from prohibited areas and sell, Heifer blue rattle, twin spotted rattlesnakes or something. For nail polish. Just luckily they were so dumb that they could get busted and hopefully, well fined for their actions there. But that there's definitely certain states that take it a lot more seriously than others, where there's we had a friend who heard a story of a guy in Arizona that found a twin spot, and he had some tongs and he grabbed it and went, I got one. I got a twin spot. And all of a sudden a ranger came out of the forest. And said, here is your $5,000 fine. Enjoy,
Setups aren't necessarily cool.
Yeah. I'm not,
and I don't think he had any intent to collect or anything like that. It was just excitement of finding one, but you're not allowed to interact with them or handle them at all. Same thing with like throwing a toy or live Gila on the road to try to entrap people to stop and handle it or mess with it. Then they can pull out of the bushes and say, "You touched that Gila monster. I saw it. I've got you on camera," or whatever. And
so it didn't get run over. Obviously.
Or if they didn't see it and just ran it over, that's a risk to that animal too. I don't know how that's not taken to. Right.
Yeah. The one thing to highlight, right, particularly in the twin spot context and all of this, you guys have hit on it, is enforceability and a willingness to do so, right? So the context with our head for nail polish stuff is when I'm saying, oh, well, you're scot free to go to another state, not really. It just becomes a federal crime if there is one, right? Yeah. And, but then it's just a question of, and obviously this is even more exacerbated now, but a question of funding and resources and interest in terms of pursuing that. So that, it was federal agents who were monitoring king snake, seeing the head for nail polish and saying, hey, let's do this, not Arizona Game and Fish, at least as far as I recall. And if it was Arizona Game and Fish, then they were reaching out to Fish and Wildlife, federal Fish and Wildlife, to say, hey, here you go, got a live one for you. So.
Yeah. And thank goodness. I mean, there does need to be some enforcement of that. You just can't have willy-nilly, Well, and I think that's probably a very sad example is what the Egyptian tortoises. I was listening to Ralph Till on your podcast and talking about the situation of Egyptian tortoises in Egypt. Like there just is no protection for them, or they've almost been extirpated because they're cute and they're easy and whatever. That's very sad. And there's just no recourse. There's no buy-in of the Egyptians to consider these a national treasure or something to be protected.
And they started the Kleinmanni Trust or the Kleinmanni Breeding Assurance Group.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, Ralph, I don't know if you'll ever listen to this, Ralph, but my bad. I didn't remember that. But a great group of keepers are getting together and doing their best to fund some genetics work to make sure that they have a stable assurance colony for captive populations. And that is one of the coolest things I think you can do as the keepers work together. Same with like the Galapagos Tortoise Alliance and things like that they're doing.
Right. And by the same token, having those federally protected or endangered species protected might inhibit the efforts to help save them in some way, because if the place where they're from doesn't care about them, what good does protecting them here do? It just reduces our ability to reduce the market for them from the wild, if that's an issue. But it kind of boils down to a word that I think everyone feels is really naughty, and it's exploitation. And I mean, essentially, I think that's what you argue about, right, or a privilege to exploit reptiles. And people think exploit. Oh my gosh, no, that's not what I want. It's like, you do. You want to exploit dogs too. I exploit dogs because they make me happy when I pet them, usually, unless they just like crap on the floor or something. But we're exploiting reptiles for our personal gains, one way or the other. We all are, because we like it. Or we're trying to make money off of it. And if you don't like it and you're trying to make money off it, your life sucks. And I'm going to tell you that now. That's not a fun place to be. But with the Egyptian tortoise, if basically it was demonetized. I mean, you can still gift these tortoises to anyone you want, and usually when you're gifting something like that, Rob probably done it with like Puerto Rican boas, right?
Yeah,
or
Jamaican.
Right. So you're kind of careful with who you might give those to at some point, and you vet them, and they've kind of proven that they can handle the responsibility. And that's kind of what it's done here. It does hurt commercial value, and commercial value usually has a strong drive in making these decisions. The reptile hobby is like I don't know. The last stat I saw was like from 8 years ago. It was like $1.2 billion a year. Wow. So it's a lot of money. Especially after 2020.
Right.
But I think that's where the crux of this is. Do we have the right to exploit reptiles? And it's probably not. Maybe to some degree. Again, it's a big gray area, right?
Right.
You can, saying yes or no is very difficult to do. In some regards, yes. But is it my right to make money off this reptile? I don't know, maybe. Depends on the reptile, depends on the habitat, depends on how you got it, depends on where you got it. Like, there's a lot of things.
Should there be a $5, monitor lizard, or should there be a $50 monitor lizard, or should all monitor lizards come with a barrier to entry kind of thing, where they're or especially large monitors that are just going to languish if they're not given appropriate amounts of room and heat and all sorts of things, food.
And at the same time, there's being free sometimes, as Ryan, you're talking about with the Egyptians, Jamaicans, Puerto Rican bows with me. Being free can be as much or more of a barrier to entry than just being able to buy it, right? Just whoever's, X amount of money spends just as well as someone else. In our context, in some ways, it's actually more difficult. The barrier to entry is actually higher than if it was just some arbitrary amount of money.
And I would argue that those free animals that are ESA listed that are can only be gifted or sold within the state, I guess. But that seems like it's not exploitation. It's trying to do something for the animals. Maybe, I don't know. Does that fall under a different category? Because
I think it's a linguistic construction around the word exploitation and what that means. Right? I think we take sort of the common construction has that negative connotation. That's what Ryan's getting at. As in its true form, right? That's sort of the argument, that our utilization, even if it doesn't have that negative connotation, could fit within that meaning.
Still exploitation.
Personal gain. Yeah, I mean it can be good, it can be bad. The same thing can be good and bad. So where was I going with that? I just lost. I had a theme like rolling around in there, and I just went off the rails and I forgot it.
Exploitation by a flesh peddling, flipper that's buying as cheap as he can and selling as quick as he can before it dies. That exploitation I'm not on board with, but exploitation of a species to keep them, established, like a Jamaican bow at Rob's house. That's it. Good exploitation.
Agreed. Exploitation is not a bad word.
Yeah.
It feels bad though, doesn't it?
Feel bad.
Like that does not, like if you had a sign, a positive or negative sign to exploitation, it's likely not going to be a positive.
Exactly.
But to the ESA thing, I fully support the ESA. I think the Endangered Species Act is a wonderful piece of legislation, but they drop off a lot of places. And one of the places they've dropped off is it's impossible to get a CBW permit anymore. I think people would happily go through some of these permitted things, and having that pathway, I think, should be a right. But the privilege just to grab an animal, I don't think should be there necessarily in this context.
And you look at some of the, and again, should it be limited to just United States species, or should I just think about all those radiated tortoises that were kept in that house, 20,000. What was it was some ridiculous number, just poor, terrible conditions, waiting for export on a container or what? I mean, like, how do you even move that many tortoises? It's ridiculous. And then, what happens? Like you can't like put them in jail or something. Well, maybe they did. I don't know what happened.
They did out there. Yeah. I think there's some, I don't know what, I have no idea what Madagascar
I know if you're snooping around
trafficking, but
if you're snooping around too near to the big tortoise, what's the big one out there? The other big tortoise.
The plowshare.
Plowshare. Yeah. If you're snooping around there at night in the wrong place, you might be dead. Yeah. Or
they have armed guards around the Turtle Survival Alliance compound.
And there's that story of the guys who got shot and they were out looking for chameleons or something, or so they
sure they
were.
Yeah.
I think.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's that's
well, Madagascar, you just get the plague. Although I guess you get that in Colorado or something.
Right. Oh boy.
I think that my microphone tried to run away. I was thinking back to what you said about the king snake, and I think that one of the helpful ways to determine right versus privilege is advocacy to some degree. The odds of finding enough people to advocate for king snakes in Utah feels like really astronomically low. And that's why I was very surprised that was able to get done. And that's why some of these states have their regulations in place, is because there's not someone to argue the other way. It's just like it's always been that way, and that's where we go. And there's not a lot of support. We have, like in Ohio, you can, for 6 months of the year, you can collect an unlimited number of soft shell turtles or snapping turtles above a certain carapace length. with a fishing license. You can
Right.
commercially collect them.
Yeah.
You can't send them across state lines unless it's meat, but that is a lot.
Yeah.
And no one's really advocating for where are the snapping turtles going, where are the Midland
Right.
softshell turtles going.
Didn't that apply to
they-
alligator snappers as well?
I don't know. I don't have alligator
certain
snappers in
states?
Ohio.
Oh, in certain states.
some.
There was like some stories of like people see, you go to the house and there'd be just shells of alligator.
Oh
snapper.
yeah.
They'd eat
Probably
them,
Louisiana and Texas.
Right.
Because
Oh,
they had conflicting regulations for a while, and people I'm going to get the states wrong, but you couldn't get them in one state, but you could in the other. And if you lived on the border,
yeah.
and you
Cross
had been
the border, grab one, take it home, have a meal,
especially that's been your livelihood forever. It's
right. Yeah.
it's
And
tough
I
to
mean,
switch gears
again, should they be denied that? What's the difference between an alligator snapper
personal
and
consumption versus sale to someone else maybe becomes
Sure,
an issue there too.
the issue? Yeah.
Yep, that's another great point. And also the pathway to do it responsibly. And I think that's why if you're not doing it responsibly, that's not right, man.
Right.
Are we doing our best? Just think of the reptile hobby in general. There's so many great people, but you all know an equally or more amount of shitheads. Am I allowed to? I'm sorry, I've said a few slightly bad.
Well, we
words,
had Ron St. Pierre on last week, and
oh, I'm good.
Yeah, you're all right.
All right.
Yeah.
So if we made reptile laws based on from my perspective, the majority of reptile keepers, it wouldn't be good.
Yeah. And like you said, there's the negative connotation that goes along with a lot of people, and I think anybody can cross that line fairly easily. If they get in a bad financial situation and they don't have time for their collection anymore and don't have time to sell it, or they're trying to dump it on people, or they get a mite infestation and just go, well, whatever, I'm sick of this anyway, like that's not a great thing. Or release it in the wild, which is kind of the worst
of
all worlds, depending on what species you're releasing and where. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this for sure. It's not simple, and I don't know. That's how to regulate everything. I guess that's why you have states that regulate their own resources and figure things out. I think for Utah with the king snake thing, there was a group of us that were interested in getting laws changed, and we had some efforts. We had some coordination. They also the state of Utah was very helpful in this regard in one way, where they actually funded us they reimbursed us gas money to go out and herp, basically to do kind of a survey to try to show that some of these things are not as rare as they're made out to be. For example, like the mountain king snakes, right? Those were prohibited. You couldn't keep a Utah mountain king snake because they just were so rare, you would never see them. But then once you go out herping, you learn how to find them. You go out looking for them. I mean, they're out there, they're just they live underground most of the year, and you don't see them very often, except for, maybe a couple months out of the year. Milk snakes, you got to look under rocks, and they're there, but you're not just going to see them crawling around too often. So I think these common sense things, and then we got those laws changed. You can now collect, 2 mountain king snakes on permit, and you can even breed them and sell the offspring if you so desire, and which I think is good for the population of mountain king snakes in Utah. Instead of just having illegal trade or people coming over, grabbing some, taking them back to their state, and Utahns being none the wiser. It's like now they can be kept in a responsible manner, trackable manner. Now the downside of that is, like, we were having this influencer change or whatever, and for some reason they wanted to target us and find out what we were doing illegally, and they had arrested a guy that had poached Gila monsters and sent him out as an informant. He was part of the group, and so he came around trying to find people that were breaking the law or whatever,
trying to make stuff up.
Exactly. He basically made something up and got Ryan Hoyer busted for his rubber boa that he said was illegal, but Ryan assured him and showed him the paperwork and everything that it was collected in a legal place and with permits and everything. So it's just a big mess. And then that spooked everybody, like, oh, if they're gonna do this kind of thing, I can't be a part of this group. And the group disbanded and kind of went away. It was really kind of a sad thing.
Yeah, it sounds like a group that could have gotten a lot accomplished.
Right.
And
right.
and it's trackable, not to like a crazy degree, but at least the state has some idea of how many snakes are removed from the wild at and you can do some sort of population dynamics on that.
Right.
And just at least have the data for when you might need it. I think that's important. That's being responsible.
Yeah, for sure. So, giving that pathway to doing those kind of things is important, I think. But to letting us have those rights.
Even that, right, reminds me of our trip to Western Pennsylvania to go find the Mastaga, right, where it was like Nipper, engaging with Ranger Taylor, right, and that to, okay, I'm on board, I get it, I appreciate, why you guys are here, what you're interested in doing, how this fits into your deal, and that it's not problematic, right, and have a positive relationship, and hey, you can engage with them in this way and all that. You can be a help, literally help, help to the project, instead of always, presuming negative intent and being sort of cynical about the whole thing. So that it's, I think there really is utility there. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's nice to meet a Ranger Taylor versus a Ranger, no go, whatever you want. The blockers versus facilitators. That's kind of life struggle, right? Working with blockers, and you sure enjoy facilitators after working with
Makes
blockers.
Makes a huge difference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well,
so we agree. It's a privilege. I'm glad. Did I win?
I think so. I think you got
I think everybody wins. We're still keeping reptiles, and that's good. But I think it's one of those things you have to think about. I think as an individual, you should have those thoughts. Hopefully people are having these types of discussions with themselves. Is a weird way to put it. But, hopefully you're thinking about this. And that means you care, I think.
Yeah.
Whether you think it's a right or a privilege, that you would have that, that thought, I think is a positive sign.
It has consequences either way, right? That's the thing, right? Whichever way we would fall in it and however you want to frame it. It has, I think, Brian, you do a great point of, in terms of the exploitation discussion and things of saying like, hey, what are the consequences? And we typically think of those in very human-centric context. And it's like, I think that's what you're mostly calling out there, is saying, there is an impact here, and let's make sure we're being responsible and respectful of that, appreciating.
And I think just like exploitation, the word right can have a negative meaning to it as well. When you're getting caught doing something that you shouldn't be doing. Well, it's my right to do whatever I want to do, and you can't tell me. There's a lot of that goes on too. Don't tell me what to do.
The right to self-actualization, but that doesn't mean that I can negatively impact you along the way.
Exactly.
People do lose that.
Good point.
Yeah. So I think
we didn't even touch on like the right to buy a reptile without knowing the source, without where did it even come from. Like there's deep conversations into this. You could probably have a podcast, right? Oh my gosh, there's a lot of those.
Especially taking in the
both,
in both contexts, right? If we're talking even going back to the 80s and in terms of particularly coming out of jurisdictions from which they're prohibited, what those conditions look like. It's cool to think in terms of it getting here and sort of the progression and the story and the narrative of a WOMA, crawling into a cassette tape case and then being posted. There's sort of a romance to that, I think, sometimes. At the same time, and, what's made reptiles so adaptable to that is the fact that it is their sort of physiology, right? Allows that to be possible in a way that it wouldn't be for most other things. So adaptable to those conditions, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily okay, and certainly not cost-free.
Yeah. And also given a path to legal acquisition, you're going to avoid a lot of this black market nonsense.
Right.
It's such a it's such a
I mean,
two-way
I think
street to
right,
some extent.
Tesaurus de Colombia, and the various Wakiri, the different projects in situ, right down in particularly
Right.
South America in the context of dart frogs,
Mhm.
led essentially, right, it's trying to combat the illegal frog trade by, making captive in situ produced offspring legally available, but they're still competing on price point, and
Right.
it costs a
Right.
certain amount to actually produce those animals in
Yeah.
situ in those places, and they're generally speaking they're fine with when they have new animals, but they always need to have something new every year or two.
Mhm.
Otherwise, invariably the price drop. The prices people are willing to pay on the things that have been readily available for a period of time go down, and the ability to make sure that that number stays where it can still support the venture is probably going to put those frogs priced higher than frogs that are not don't have sort of that verifiable legitimate source on them. And yeah, commercial pressure definitely negatively impacts the ability of those industries to keep working.
Right.
I mean, that's a great point of why the black market is not going anywhere anytime soon. It just kind of fluctuates with what we can do.
Right.
But yeah, I love those stories. Have you guys ever heard of Project Piaba?
No.
Of the cardinal tetras?
No.
It's like an old thing. I remember this from back in my aquarium days in the early 2000s. But basically, there's a whole village in Brazil that they've done population studies on the cardinal tetra there, and there's a certain amount that they harvest every year and sell to the pet trade, and that money helps them stay there. They don't sell their land for agriculture and other sources, and the whole thing is buy a fish, save a tree.
Yeah. Right.
So it's well done. It's sustainably done. It's ethically done, responsibly done, and I think that there used to be like the Inabico project in Peru. Whereas like Zuri Venture Start frogs, stuff, they put out a ton of artificial nest sites, and they would just harvest the eggs, and just like you would do in captivity, probably similar thing in Colombia.
Right.
Anyways,
I think that could probably be done just about anywhere. Like you say, if you're overproducing and producing just a ton, and exporting 3,000 or something to small area or something, you're going to run out of that
market demand for whatever
market
it is.
demand.
Sure.
Exactly. So you've got to balance the market demand with the price and the how much you're doing it.
Man, that's too much thinking for me.
I know, right? Yeah. I always think about shinglebacks too, because over in Australia they're a couple $100 lizard. Over here they're a couple tens of $1,000 lizard. They're just ridiculously expensive. And I mean, when I was there in one stretch of a mile stretch, and it was pretty good shingleback habitat. There were a lot of shinglebacks in the area, but there were so many like carcasses. And again, shingleback carcasses probably stick around for longer than other carcasses because the osteoderms or whatever, but lots and lots just in this 1 mile stretch. There were probably 20, 30 dead shinglebacks in a mile. It's like, yeah, it's crazy. So
you sell like 20 shinglebacks out of Australia. You can probably fund the biotunnels or bridges for those things and not get hit on roads.
Right. Yeah, especially in those concentrated areas. Yeah.
Well, it reminds me of the Malcolm Douglas video, right, from the late 80s, mid to late 80s, where he's out with some indigenous folks, I think on the border between the Northern Territory and Western Australia. I think in Western Australia, but very isolated. And they find, they turn up the most beautiful Woma python you can imagine, and they club it over the head and eat it, as $3 worth of meat. And it's like, particularly at that time, you're talking about, obviously the means didn't exist, A, it's illegal, B, the means don't exist, whatever, but it's like, well, that got eaten as $3 worth of meat instead of, something that would double the the GDP of that community for the year. Like, it's tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and what sort of where does the utility fit? Where does the exploitation fit? Is it the personal consumption, of that? Hey, it was two guys had a meal that day versus, sitting in a box in somebody's house. I don't know. It's all, it gets hairy, right? The deeper
right.
the onion, so.
Well, and I mean, at least it was a $3 piece of meat rather than a DOR jerky.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think there are many roads going through there. Didn't look like it.
Well, I was listening.
Run them over, but, yeah.
I was listening to Ross McGibbon. He was on. Was it
Expert in the Idiot?
Expert in the Idiot, and talking about photography and stuff, but coming across WOMAs in up in that area, northern territory, but in the sandy areas, and seeing 3 or 4 crispy critter WOMAs, even though there's a lot of trucks moving through there. Yeah, so that's it's a challenge for sure. But yeah, those remote areas, I mean, there's got to be pretty good populations, they're potentially could support.
That doesn't mean they're easy to turn up, but
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, if somebody said, hey, I've got this new blood locality WOMA pair that I found,
oh my God.
The price point on that would be unimaginable.
Right. And you say, I got permits to export this one pair. Who wants it? Highest bidder gets it, kind of thing. There could be something to that.
Do some serious community development with that money. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Then all the Australian exporters are like, let me get in on that. And then they descend on the land, and it's I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Right. But I guess that's the thing, is that control is imperative, because like you said, if you open the floodgates, then that's bad.
Right. And you're going to devalue the thing. It won't be that sort of that price point. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's such a complicated issue, and it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It's right and it's wrong.
Yeah.
What's that damn cat? Schrodinger's cat. It's Schrodinger's WOMA right there.
Schrodinger's WOMA. There you go. Good stuff. Well, I think this was a good discussion, and some things to think about for sure, and more things to talk about down the road. We've kind of scratched the surface, and but appreciate your input. This is really a good conversation. I'm curious about your job. We forgot to ask you about your job, and you've left the zoo field, and you're doing more environmental impact. Is that what am I remembering wrong?
My job is all over the place. I look at my job description, it's like several pages, but I left the zoo field, and now I'm a conservation biologist for the county I live in. I'm a state employee at the county. But we're the largest landowner in this county. And basically I am responsible for not solely, but the conservation of wildlife in Southwest Ohio. And some of that is managing our deer herd. So it's not all reptiles. Managing our deer herd, it's learning plants. I'm getting a free college education, botanical education from this job. I've learned unbelievable amounts of information about plants.
Right.
And now I can't go anywhere. I'm looking at plants, I'm looking at bugs, I'm looking at, but that'll help you find your reptiles. You guys know that.
Right.
That'll help you find anything you need to. But it's crazy. It's really, really cool.
Awesome.
Some of the stuff we do, like we have cave salamanders, which are prolific in most of the states where they're found, but we have a very crazy population in Southwest Ohio where we don't really have caves, but we have a lot of karst. We have a lot of limestone, and they kind of live in mini caves, and it's a very cool population. But we go as far as to some manage to find through aquifers their way into one of our restrooms. And that restroom was slated for removal. And so instead of just bulldozing it down, we took time and made a plan to remove it slowly and carefully and look for salamanders. And now it came down. We didn't lose any salamanders. And now we're looking at a habitat improvement project. So then in case they're still there, we don't even know if they're still there, if they go really down deep, but to make sure that we create a space that is aesthetically pleasing, but also meets the needs of these salamanders in case they're still there. That's like wild to me, but incredibly cool.
That's really
that's just And then we had a bear that was going through our county. Ohio has very few bears, but that was wild last week. It went through many townships, and so
that's cool.
But So I'm talking about all this crap you probably don't want to hear
No,
about. But
no, that's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
doing a population estimate survey or population estimates on Kirtland snakes, which is a state threatened species. We found northern rough green snakes. Hadn't been documented in the county for 20 plus years. And now we've got a study going on with those, which is really wild and
that's awesome.
really cool. And I'm trying to get a lot of turtle stuff done, but that's difficult. I can have a whole PowerPoint presentation on graptemes in Southwest Ohio and how the hell they get here. But yeah, doing lots of stuff, and it's really, really rewarding.
Very cool.
There's lots to miss about the zoo, a lot of the animals, but as I evolved as a human being, the rewards for the conservation work I'm doing now is much more meaningful to me as an individual.
Okay.
Still love zoos, but man, I made a great decision, and it's really fun. Opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially the terms natural area and disturbance. I use that way too much.
Yeah. My grandpa was a mule deer expert. So he was one of probably the foremost expert of his time back in the, early 1900s. But yeah, my dad knows a lot of plants because of that. I think, going through and he'll quiz me, and I'm terrible at retaining that information. A lot of plants, and you'll watch him and his brother fight over what a plant is, and you're like, it's pretty funny, pretty entertaining. But
just stuff. Like we'd argue over somebody, whether that's a young longtail salamander or Cape salamander.
Right.
Sorry, and I got salamanders on the brain. So
yeah, we had that with Kahira in Australia. Like I guess there's some species. I asked an expert, that wrote the field guide, Chris Jolly, and I'm like, what species is this? And he's like, do you have any DNA analysis of it? And I'm like, no. He's like, then you're not gonna know. Like that's the only way to tell though, that group apart from each other is DNA analysis. They just are too similar. They look identical, but they're vastly different in genetics.
I told you we needed to make that part of our process.
Yeah. have a little thermocycler out in the desert. Quick, grab a toe. We need to analyze this one. Cool stuff.
Where's RGI? Awesome. They need to get on it.
Yeah, there you go. Come on, Ben. Where are you at with that?
Move it.
Well, yeah, it's been great having you on. So I guess people know where to find you. Where do you frequent?
I don't frequent anywhere anymore, but yeah, thanks for having me on. I always like chatting with you fellas. It's always a good conversation.
You're a guest we like to have back. So
I feel like we were a little off. I felt like I went a little off the rails today, but it was great conversation and lots for people to think about. But I still maintain Rad Reptile, so you can find me there if you're in the market for Florida box turtles or soon Okatee corn snakes or Holmes hingeback tortoises. Let me know, but feel free to reach out. It might take me a second to get back to you because I'm not as quick on there anymore. But as Justin probably figured out when you were asking me, I was like, oh. But yeah, fellas, it was great. Thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for keeping up with the consistency of the podcasts. I know how hard that is and how much time it takes. So thanks for putting out good quality content for folks. And for not being shitheads.
Yeah. We'll bleep that later.
Sorry, threading that from the conversation.
I love a good callback. It's we usually kind of end the podcast with cool things you've seen in herpetoculture, herpetology lately, or nature in general. I started watching the reality show, I guess, All the Sharks. Mike Clarkson helped develop this show. It's a really cool concept, and it's been really fun to watch. Basically, you have 4 teams. They're sending them out so they started in the Maldives, and then they went to Australia, and now they're going to Japan. So we're on episode 3, but they just go out and dive. They can pick different spots, and they try to find every species of shark they can. They have a point value, so you take a picture and you get certain points for finding the sharks, and it's really a cool concept and really fun. I'd love to see it applied to reptiles and herping. That would be really cool to get dropped off in Australia for a couple days to go compete to see if you can find the most cool herps. But yeah, pretty fun. I would really recommend checking it out and supporting
Cool.
it, so we can hopefully get more cool wildlife positive. There's no like danger of sharks, or they're just out finding cool sharks and showing the diversity of species in different areas and things you wouldn't even like. Oh, that's a real thing, huh? It's really
Right.
fun. Yeah,
That sounds awesome. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. Yeah, I
yeah.
will
It's
check
is
that
on
out.
Netflix.
Yeah.
So yeah, check it out on Netflix.
Even better.
All the sharks. It's
All the
it's really
sharks.
cool. So, and then yeah, check out the Snake Week stuff. That's really some really cool talks. I don't know. I just love scientific presentations. People. Somebody like Rick Shine. I mean, he has over 1,000 publications. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, I think I'm at maybe 80 or 90. I'm like less than a tenth of what this guy's churning out. And some of the most cool research. I was reading his book, one of his books. Again, Rob helped me with the title, but
Right.
yeah.
Snakes Without Borders, I think.
Snakes
right?
Without Borders, and he's talking about learning about the skin industry, and the folks in Indonesia wanted him to study. Like, they kept dumping the carcasses at his feet, so basically he would study them because he didn't have approval to study reticulated pythons. He was studying another species, and finally he's like, he couldn't resist, so he started analyzing the different stomach contents or whatever, or that kind of thing, and basically found out, like, through his studies, that the skin industry was sustainable. They were mostly pulling reticulated pythons out of cities and towns and homes and things like that. They weren't going out into the forest and getting these giant females or anything like it. Very rarely would they get a big female in, so found it to be sustainable. And this is people's livelihoods, and I guess we don't necessarily like it, but that's somebody's right, I guess.
Are we providing an alternative, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we wouldn't like if we knew how it worked.
Right. And I think too, like, he discovered that reticulated pythons live fast. They grow quickly, so they're reaching 8 to 9 feet in very short order. So, and they have a lot of babies, lay a lot of eggs. So, I think he said one female laid 200 pounds of eggs, if I'm getting the stat right. But I mean, that's insane. Maybe it was like 50 pounds, but it was a lot of weight
Many
of
pounds.
eggs. Yeah, many.
I'd believe
pounds of
either.
eggs. Yeah, it's insane. So, if you're hatching out, 60, 80 offspring, and they're all growing very quickly, and it's a sustainable thing versus a slow growing, difficult to, so very
Not a
cool.
rubber ball.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We did that in the States with a slow growing reptile, the American alligator.
Right.
Still doing it.
Yep. Crocodiles too. I mean, that's the reason there are crocodiles in Australia. They didn't kill them all because there's a sustainable industry, and now they're overpopulating. They need to start hunting them again, probably. But now it's kind of like wolves in the Americas. You just run into that problem of, okay, we protected them. Now they're eating the cattle ranchers' sheep or cows, and what do we do now? I guess that would be weird if a cattle rancher had sheep, but anyway, ignore that.
It's all right.
Yeah. I'm sure they throw a few.
Point was made.
Yeah, but I don't know. Lots of cool stuff out there. Exciting stuff. I don't know. You guys see anything neat lately that's springing to mind?
I'm so Hamilton County, Ohio specific. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the rough green snakes have been awesome to see. We don't have a big population, but
That's
hopefully
cool.
putting together a Head Start program just to enhance. We talk at work all the time about restoring prairies and feeding prairies, and I'm like, well, let's do the same thing but with rough green snakes. And it sounds weird to people because it's an animal. I'm like, it's the same concept as what we're doing frequently. So this year I was able to get some surveys done and to mark exactly when we can find them gravid. And so we found a few gravid females. So in the next year or two, we'll do that. But yeah, the rough green snakes, I don't know if you've found them. I'm sure you have before.
Well,
good Lord, they are some of the prettiest snakes you've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just a green snake with big eyes, and they don't do anything at night. You you walk around at night and shine flashlights in the trees and just find them.
That's cool. Because well, we have smooth green snakes that make their way into Utah. They're a little harder to find, and but so I had an experience that I'm not sure if it was a dream or if it was real. When I was a kid, I swear I saw this green snake in a tree, and I was trying to, and I lost it. It made its way out. So then I'm like, did I just dream that, or did I actually see that? One of those things. So I need to go find one so I can say definitively I found one in Utah. Yeah.
You need to.
Very cool snakes. So maybe I'll have to go out with a flashlight at night and shine in the trees. I don't know. Like usually they're found under rocks here. So,
Yeah, smooth green snakes are a little more terrestrial. At least the ones in Ohio, they're a little more terrestrial. Okay. Rough greens are almost entirely arboreal, and they migrate throughout the year to different habitats that take advantage of the different invertebrate prey. Like they stick to like the those initial forests. I can't remember the successional forests because there's a lot of caterpillars, soft-bodied prey at the beginning of the year, and then they metamorphose, and then they go to these prairies and thickets where you see a lot more like grasshoppers and what is the right word? Orthopterans? I don't know. Someone correct me.
No, that's
but right. It's crazy that they do that stuff. But
that's really cool. So they're seasonal, just like a lot of things, eating things seasonally and chasing the tasty soft stuff one part of the year and the crazy hard stuff the rest of the year. I wouldn't want to eat grasshoppers. That doesn't seem fun.
No,
nice soft caterpillar. Yeah, that sounds great.
I could see that working.
Yeah,
I would rather a caterpillar than. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, that's awesome. Anything, Rob? Ross McGibbon on that podcast was a fun listen.
Yeah, I started listening.
He is quite the
that.
photographer.
That was really good. Yeah, absolutely. So
you probably want to watch that one on YouTube instead of listening to it because he goes through photos.
Yeah.
Talks about the story behind the find, which is kind of cool. Yeah,
that's very cool.
So you can still listen to it. You just won't have the visual.
The visualization there. Yeah. I guess the thing that really jumps out to me is how many cool stuff's turning up in Texas between Jordan and Instagram, the Herper Bros. It seems like they're turning up a ton of cool stuff out there. In Texas. Right back in May, early June, it was the Southern California with the Rosy Boas.
Yeah.
Seemingly early to mid-July is the West Texas time. So.
Yeah, he said Jordan, I just missed a call from him while we were recording. Sorry, Jordan. We were busy, but he said that there's been just like a crazy amount of Alterna being found in West Texas this year. So yeah, it's crazy. So, and the Chiricahuas are getting lots of rain right now. So I think he said it messed up their herping out there. He found a lot of frogs, but that's about it. So. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe it's good news for 2 months from now.
Right. Hopefully that's the case. Right. Cool. Well, thanks guys. And thanks, Eric and Owen and the NPR crew. And we'll catch you again next week for Reptile Fight Club.